behaviors and thought patterns you need to
So
be
I'm
successful in anything that you're
embarrassed
trying to do. Today's guest
that I have a career.
Leadership, and I am not talking
I talk about things like
It's
trust
I'm talking
and
about
cooperation,
Jedi level
and there should be no demand for my work.
The way that he
But the fact of the matter
combines
is there is
biology
demand for my
and
work,
psychology,
which
and quite
means
frankly,
that
just
there's an
the overall
opportunity.
human condition
It
gives
means
you
that
insight
trust and
on
cooperation
their
are not
competency
yet standard in our.
And the first thing to really talk about is I want to take you back to the beginning. And in 1995 you started.
Yeah.
You went public in 97.
You know,
And I'll adjust for
welcome
stock
back to TED.
splits, but
It's
you
great to have you
raised
here.
stock. You issued shares at $1.50 a share.
in the next half hour or
In
so,
1988, your
we're
revenue
gonna
was
spend some
$600
time
million, and you lost
exploring
$125
your vision
million.
for what an exciting
But
future
your
might
stock
look like,
had gone to
which I guess
$55 a
makes the
share.
first question
So you doubled
a
down.
little ironic.
Sales went up threefold.
Why are
you
you
lost
boring?
another $400 million.
Yeah.
But your stock went up to
Ask myself that frequently.
$76. $27 billion of market cap. Your
The,
personal net worth of $9 billion.
We're trying to dig a hole.
Take us back to that
under
time
LA.
where the market is telling
And
you you're
this is
doing
to
great,
create
but you have
the
red
beginning
ink in
of
the company. And the first thing to really talk about is I want to take you back to the beginning. And in 1995 you started.
Yeah.
You went public in 97.
You know,
And I'll adjust for
welcome
stock
back to TED.
splits, but
It's
you
great to have you
raised
here.
stock. You issued shares at $1.50 a share.
in the next half hour or so,
In 1988, your revenue
we're
was
gonna spend some
$600
time
million, and you lost
exploring
$125
your vision
million.
for what an exciting
Doing
to
great.
create
But you have
the beginning
red ink
of
in the company.
what will
You took
hopefully
on
be
$2 billion of
a 3D
debt
network
from
of tunnels
99 to 01, while you
to
doubled
alleviate
sales yet
congestion.
again.
So
What were you
right now,
thinking
I
back
think
then?
one of the most soul-destroying things
That's
is
a great,
traffic.
great
It affects
question.
people
It
in
is
every
kind
part
of
of the
fun
world.
to go back and
It
think
takes
about those
away so much
days.
of your life, and it's
in those
horrible.
days when we had,
It's particularly horrible in LA.
when I started the company
And
it was just one
But I
person
think,
and then there were 10
you've brought
people.
with you
and
the first
today
visualization
there
that's
are
been shown of
almost
this. Can I show
600,000
this?
people.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a
So
lot
this
of
is the first
change.
time, we've
But
just
back
to
in
sort
that
of show what we're
time,
talking about. So a
we were
couple
still
of
a
key
pretty
things that are
small company,
important in having
by most standards.
a 3D tunnel network.
But we
First of all,
were-
you have to be able to
we were
integrate
growing
the entrance
fast,
and
and it was
exit
very
of the tunnel
exciting.
seamlessly
You know,
into
I
the fabric
had-
of the city.
When
So
I started, I was
by
driving all the
having
packages to the post office
an
myself.
elevator, sort of a car skate
I
that's
knew the
on
UPS guy so
an
well
elevator,
that he would let
you
me
can
in
integrate
even
the
like 5
entrance
minutes
and
after
exits
closing.
to the tunnel network
So
just by
it
using
was,
two parking spaces.
I hoped one day we'd be able to afford a
And then
forklift.
the car gets
it was
on a
that
skate.
kind
There's
of
no speed limit here.
operation.
So
we're
we're designing this to be
inefficient with our
able to operate at
operations and
200 kilometers
logistics
an
in
hour,
those
about
early
130,
days when there were just
200
10 of
kilometers
us
an hour, or about
that
130
I
miles
didn't
per hour.
have packing tables. We were
So you
packing
should
on the
be able to
floor
get from,
on our hands
say,
and knees. And
Westwood to
I
LAX
said to one of the
in
software
6 minutes,
engineers who
5,
was
6 minutes.
packing alongside me, you know what we should do? We should get knee pads.
So possibly
And
initially down as
he
like
looked
on
at
a
me
sort
like
of
I
toll
was the
road type
dumbest guy he'd
basis,
ever
Yeah.
seen in his life.
which I guess
And he said,
alleviates some
"Jeff,
traffic from
we
the
should get
surface streets as
packing
well.
tables."
So I
And we-
don't know if people
next
noticed in
day
the
I
video,
got
but
packing
there's
tables and it
no
doubled our
real limit
productivity.
to how many levels
And
of
so,
tunnel you can have.
But by
So
the,
you can go
the
much
era
further
you're
deep
talking
than
about,
you can go up.
we had
The deepest
we'd gone
mines
public,
are much
and
deeper
you're
than
right,
the
on a
tallest buildings are
split-adjusted
tall.
basis, it's a
So
$1.50
you can
a
alleviate
share
any
in today's terms.
arbitrary level of open
And the market
congestion
became very
with the
quickly
3D tunnel network. This is a very important point.
kind of
So
an internet
a key rebuttal to the
bubble
tunnels
kind
is
of
that
market, and
if
the
you
stock
add
prices went up very, very high.
one layer of tunnels,
When I raised the
then
initial
that will simply alleviate congestion, will get used
funding
up,
for Amazon,
and
I had to talk to
and
60
then you'll be back where you started, back
prospective
with congestion. But you can go
investors
to
to raise
any
$1 million,
arbitrary number of
and I raised $1
tunnels,
million
any number of
from
levels.
22
But people
different
assume
investors,
traditionally it's incredibly
$50,000
expensive
at
to
a time,
dig, and that would
and they
block
got
this idea.
20%
Yeah.
of the company for $1 million.
Well, they're right. To give you an
And
example,
that was in
the
95.
LA subway
But just
extension,
3 years,
which
2 or 3
is,
years later,
I think it's a 2.5 mile extension that was
Stanford
just completed
MBA
for $2
with
billion.
no business
So it's
experience
roughly
could raise
$1 billion
$25
a
million
mile
with a
to
single phone call
the subway
if they
extension
had
in
a
LA.
internet
And
business
this is
plan.
not the
So
highest
whole thing in
utility
just 2
subway
or
in the
3
world.
years, the excitement
so
really,
yeah,
as
it's
we
quite
would
difficult to
shortly
dig
see
tunnels
when the
normally.
bubble burst
I
in
think
the
we
year
need to have at least
2000, the
a
hyperbolic
tenfold
excitement
improvement in the cost
about
per
the
mile
internet had
of
infected
tunneling.
everybody.
And how could you achieve that?
I guess
I knew that
actually,
there was,
if you
that
just
we
do
had a
two
fundamental,
things,
I liked
you
our
can get to
business.
approximately
and
an
I
order
liked
of
the
magnitude
fundamentals
improvement.
of our business.
And I think you can
But
go
also
beyond
knew
that.
that the stock
So
price was
the first thing to do
disconnected
is to cut the
from what we were
tunnel
doing on
diameter
a day-to-day basis. And so I
by
was
a
always
factor of
preaching.
2 or more.
We would have
So,
all
so a
hands
single
meetings,
road
and there was
lane
a
tunnel would,
small number of employees at that
according to
time,
regulations,
but,
has to be 26
probably,
feet, maybe 28 feet in
let's see,
diameter
in,
to allow for
97,
crashes and
I think we would
emergency
have had a few
vehicles
hundred employees.
and sufficient
We would
ventilation
have
for
all hands
combustion
meetings,
engine cars.
and I would say,
but
look,
if you shrink
you know,
that
I
diameter
remember the
to
great quote
what
from
we're
Benjamin
attempting, which is
Graham,
12
that
feet,
in
which
the
is plenty to
short
get
run,
an electric
the
skate
stock
through,
market is a voting
you drop
machine. In the long run,
the
it's a
diameter by a
weighing
factor of
machine.
2 and the
So
cross-sectional
don't think
area
about
by
the
a
daily
factor
stock
of 4.
price. It was going
So
up every day. The
and
stock
the
price was
tunneling
going
cost
up.
scales with the cross-sectional
And,
area.
I
So
didn't
that's
want, 'cause all the
roughly a half
employees
order of
had
magnitude
stock
improvement right
options,
there.
and I didn't want
Then
them
tunneling
counting their
machines
success that
currently
way. And so I
tunnel
would
for
say,
half the
look,
time,
when the stock
then they
is up
stop,
30%
and then
in a month,
the rest of
don't
the time
feel
is putting in
30%
reinforcements
smarter.
for the tunnel
Because
wall.
when it's down
So if you
30%
have
in a month,
if you
then
design
you
the
have to
machine
feel
instead to do
30%
continuous
dumber.
tunneling and
And it's not gonna
reinforcing,
feel as
that'll give you a
good.
factor of 2
And it
improvement.
was good that
Combine
I
that, and it's
kind
a
of
factor
laid
of
that
8.
groundwork because, you
Also,
know,
these
sure
machines
enough,
are
in the
far
year
from
2000,
being at
the whole
their
thing
power or
came
thermal
tumbling
limit.
down. I think
So you can
Amazon
jack up
went
the
back
power
to
to the
about
machine
$6.
substantially.
Went down to
I think you can get
$6,
at least a
and
factor
I don't
of
even
2,
know if that's on a
maybe
split
a
adjusted
factor
basis. I
of
think that's
4 or 5 improvement
probably
on top of
that was
that.
below. That
So
was on a
I think
split adjusted basis,
there's
probably below
a fairly
$1.
straightforward
So,
series of
and
steps
did you ever doubt
to
the
get
business model at
somewhere in
that
excess of
No.
order of magnitude
So
improvement in
you
the
know,
cost
it's
per
very
mile.
interesting to me because I had all the
and,
internal metrics
our
on
target
how many
actually is we've got a
customers we
pet
had,
snail
what's
called
going on. I
Gary.
could see people
This is
thought
from
we were
Gary the
losing
snail
money
from
because
South
we were
Park.
selling dollar bills for 90 cents.
SpongeBob
No, we were very
SquarePants.
clear that we were not. We had
So-
high fixed
so
costs,
Gary
but we had
is capable
contribution margin, positive
of
contribution
currently
margin.
he's capable of
And I just
going
knew that it was a
14
fixed
times
cost
faster
business, and as soon as we
than
reached
a tunnel boring
sufficient
machine.
scale, we would have a very
Okay.
good business. And so that was that
so-
understanding of the fixed
We want to beat Gary.
nature of our expenses relative to
He's not a patient little fellow,
is
and
what led us
we want
to have
the
the get big fast strategy.
that will be victory.
We knew
Victory
that it
is
would
beating
be,
the snail.
that our economics would be very much
But
improved
a lot of
if we
people
could
imagining,
have
dreaming
a
about
sufficient
future cities,
scale.
they imagine that
We
the
worked
actual
hard on
solution
it.
is,
So at that
is sort
time,
of flying
we
cars,
were preaching
drones,
the
etc.
benefits of
You
e-commerce
go above
and
ground.
really
Why isn't that a
disintermediating
better
the business.
solution? Save all
So
that
fast
tunneling
forward
cost.
to today. Now we have
Right.
content.
I'm in favor
We have
of flying
physical
things.
Amazon stores.
And
We
I've
have
said do
Amazon
rockets. So,
cashierless
I like
stores.
things that
Yeah.
fly.
We used to call shoplifting.
There's not some inherent bias
and then now
against
you,
flying
now,
It's shoplifting
But-
without the jail time.
That's right.
There is a challenge
and
with flying
and then,
cars
and then
in
buying
that
Whole Foods
they're
here for
quite
a Texas
noisy.
company. So how does that
The
how does
wind
that fit
force
together
generated
your
would be very
vision, and
high.
then how do you manage those disparate
they-
businesses with
there's-
different cost structures?
Yeah,
Let's just say
well,
that if something's flying
by
over
the
your
way,
head,
just
if there are a whole
maybe
bunch of flying cars going all over the place,
finishing up a little on that prior point before I answer
that is not
question.
an
And also
anxiety-reducing
with, the memory
situation.
of Barbara Bush in all of our
You don't think
minds.
to yourself, well, I feel better
I
about
think part of if
today.
you're- a lot of people in this room are entrepreneurs.
You're
started
thinking
their
like, did they
businesses, done
service their
various things,
hubcap?
taken risks
Or
of
is it
various
going to
kinds.
come off and
And I think
guillotine me as a flying cars?
One of the precursors, one of the foundational things.
And so,
to
so, you're,
being
so you've
able
got
to
this
take
vision of
risks
future
is to
cities with
have
these rich
had
3D
some kind of
networks of
support from
tunnels
somebody. You have to have
underneath.
some mentors.
Is there a tie in here
You
with,
have to have
with
somebody who
Hyperloop?
loves
Could you apply
you.
these
These are the
tunnels
kind
to
of
use for
things
this
that build
Hyperloop
up and
idea
allow
you
you
released a few years
to
ago?
kind of jump
so,
off into uncharted terrain and
No,
do
we've been sort of
something
puttering
new
around
because
with
you
the
know you
Hyperloop
have
stuff for
a support system
a
of
while.
one
We
kind or
built
another.
a
And,
Hyperloop test
and I
track
certainly
based in
did. So that-
SpaceX
for me,
just
I
for a
just want
student
to point out
competition
that
to
I feel very
encourage innovative
strongly
ideas
that
in transport. And
there's
actually ends up
I've
being
won a lot of lotteries.
the biggest
Amazon is one of the lotteries that
vacuum
I've
chamber
won.
in the world
But I had a
after
big
the Large
lottery
Hadron
with my
Collider.
parents. My dad is a Cuban
By
immigrant.
volume.
He
So-
came here when he was 16 years old and speaking English.
So it was sort of quite fun to do that.
He's a
But
great
it was
guy.
kind of a hobby thing.
And my mother
And then
had her
we
had
think we
me when
might-
she was
so we
17
developed a
years
little
old.
pusher
So she was
car
a
to
pregnant
push these
16-year-old
the
in
student
Albuquerque,
pods.
New Mexico, in high school, which was not
But we're going to
cool.
try seeing how fast we can make the
she made it
pusher
work,
go
and
if it's
her
not pushing
parents, My
something.
grandparents helped her with that
So,
whole thing.
I mean, like, sort of cautiously
made that all
optimistic we'll
work.
be able to
If
faster
you don't
than
get that
a,
kind of support
the
somehow,
world's
it
fastest
doesn't
bullet
have to be
train,
your
even
parents.
in a
Sometimes people
0.8
lucky
mile
it's a
stretch.
grandparent or it's a friend or a family friend or a
break.
teacher.
Yeah.
It can be somebody,
it's-
but you need that. Somebody
Yeah,
has to
it's either
step
gonna
into
smash
your life.
into tiny
That's a
pieces
lottery
or-
that I suspect
But you
a
could
lot
you
of
could
people
picture you could
fast.
picture then
also
hyperly
won, just like me.
in a tunnel.
So the question
Go,
is,
Amazon
Yes.
Running
Go.
quite
long
We
distances.
do so many
Exactly,
different
so-
things. So This is the
in
question I
looking
was
at tunneling
getting.
technology, it turns out that
How
in order to
can
make
you
a
do so many
tunnel,
different things?
you have to.
Why don't you stick to the knitting, the kind of
in order to seal
traditional
against the
advice
water
would be to
table,
stay focused and
you've got
keep the
to
business
typically
simple.
design a tunnel
And
wall to be
the way I think
a
about
good to
this
about 5 or 6
is
atmospheres.
We actually do stick to one thing. It's
So
just
to go to
not,
vacuum is only 1 atmosphere.
It's not
or
the
near
business
vacuum.
itself. We do
So,
web services, which is
actually,
big enterprises
it sort of
buying
turns out that
compute
automatically,
services
if
from
you
us.
build a tunnel
We have
that
our
is good
retail
enough
business,
to
we
resist
have
the water
Amazon
table,
Studios, which
it is
make
automatically
original
capable of
content,
holding
Amazon Go,
vacuum.
the things you listed.
So, yeah.
But the,
And so,
the
so you can actually
cultural
picture this, like
thread that
what kind
runs
of
through all
length
these things
tunnel
is the same.
do you,
We only
is
have
in
a few
Elon's future?
principles
running
of
Hyperloop?
Amazon.
Yeah, I
kind
think
of core values
there's
that
no
we
real
go
length
back
limit.
to over and over again.
You
If
could
you looked at each of the
pick
things
as much
that we
as you
do,
want.
you would
I
see
think
those run
like if you were to do
straight
something
through
like
everything. So
a DC
the
to
first
New York
one, and by far the most important one, is
Hyperloop,
customer
I think you'd probably want to
obsession.
go underground the
And
entire
we
way
talk about
because
it
it's a
as
high
customer
density area.
obsession
You're
as
going
opposed to
under a lot of
competitor
buildings and
obsession.
houses. And if
I
you go
have
deep
seen
enough,
over and over
you
again
cannot
companies
detect the
talk
tunnel.
about
This is sometimes people
that
think,
they're
well,
customer
it's going to be
focused,
pretty annoying
but really,
to have
when I
a
pay
tunnel
close
dug under my
attention
house.
to them,
But if that
I
tunnel
believe
is
they're
dug more than about
competitor-focused.
3 or
And it's
4
just a
tunnel
completely
diameters
different
beneath your
mentality.
house,
By the
you will
way,
not be able to
competitor
detect
focus
it being
can
dug
work,
at all.
but I don't think it works
in fact,
in the long run as well as
if you're able to
customer
detect the
focus.
tunnel
For one thing, once you're the leader,
being dug,
if your whole culture
whatever
is
device you're using,
competitor-obsessed,
you can get a
it's kind
lot of
hard to
money
stay
for that device
energized
from the
and
Israeli
motivated if you're
military,
out in
who's trying to
front.
detect tunnels from
Whereas
Hamas,
customers are always
and
unsatisfied.
from the
They're
U.S.
always
Customs
discontent.
and Border Patrol
They
that trying to
always
detect
want
drug
more.
tunnels.
And so no matter how far
if you
get out
the
there in
reality
front
is
of your
that
competitors, you're still
Earth is
behind your
incredibly good at
customers.
absorbing
So
vibrations,
they're always pulling
and once
you
the
along.
tunnel
So
depth is
customer
below a certain
obsession
level, it is
a deep principle
undetectable.
that underlies
Maybe you have a
everything we do.
very
Another
sensitive
one is
seismic instrument, you might be able
eagerness
to detect it.
invent. So we love
So
to
you've
pioneer.
started a new company
And when
to
we
do
have
this
done, by the way,
called
whenever
Boring
we have
Company.
tried to
Very
do
nice,
something
very
in a
funny.
kind of Me Too fashion, we have failed at
It's
it.
funny about that.
We need to have
How,
something that is differentiated.
how much of your time is
unique,
this?
Something that customers are going to
It's-
like,
it's,
that we're kind of leading with.
It's maybe
So that's another element
2 or 3%.
that works for us.
You've called it a hobby.
And then
This is
another
what
one
an Elon
is
Musk hobby
long-term
looks like.
thinking. We are willing
I mean, it really
to,
is like we actually.
to
You know,
take some
this is
time and be
basically
patient
interns
with our business
and people
initiatives,
doing
and
it
that
part
runs
time.
through
So this is
everything. So a lot of our competitors might
like we bought
have
you
2 to 3 year kind of
some
time
secondhand
frames, and we might have
machinery
more
and
5 to 7
it's kind of
years
puttering
at a
along,
time.
but it's
And then
making good
the
progress.
last
So
one, operational excellence.
So an even
So
bigger part of your time is being spent
literally,
on
you know,
electrifying
how do you have
cars
high
and transport
standards around,
through Tesla.
you know, identifying defects,
Is one of the
fixing
motivations
defects
for
at
the
root,
tunneling project
all
the
those kinds
realization
of
that
things that
actually
lead to
in a world where
what I
cars
think
are electric
also
and
could mean a
where they're
simpler way to
self-driving,
state it as
there may end up
professionalism. You wanna do
being
things
more
right
cars
just
on
for
the
the
roads
sake
on any
of
given
doing
hour
Yeah.
than there are now.
Let's talk about that
Yeah,
with another,
exactly.
I guess this is a corollary. Now that you have about 600,000
A lot of people
employees,
think
I
that
calculated
once
you're
when you
adding
make
about
cars
250 people
autonomous,
a day.
that
You've
they'll be able to
mentioned
go
that you're trying
faster
to fend off
and
day 2.
that will alleviate
And you've said that
congestion.
day 2 is stasis,
And to some degree that would
followed
be
by
true.
irrelevance,
But
followed by
once you have
excruciatingly
shared
painful
autonomy where
decline, followed
it's
by
much
death.
cheaper to
That
go
is
by
why it is
car. You can
always
go
day
point to
1.
point.
How's that work?
The affordability
Well, so
of
day one,
of going in a
this is
car will
phrase
be-
that we
will be
use
better
at
than that of a
Amazon all the
bus. Like, it
time.
would
I've been
cost less
using
than
it
a
for
bus
my
ticket.
first annual shareholder letter from 20 years ago.
the amount of driving that will occur will be much greater with
It's
shared
always day
autonomy,
one,
and actually
it
traffic
needs to
will
be
get
day one
far
for
worse.
the reason that you just
I mean, you
mentioned.
started Tesla with the goal of
And how do you,
persuading
so
the
real
world
question for me
to
is how
that
do you go about
electrification was the
maintaining a
future
day
of
one
cars.
culture?
And
You know,
a
it's
few years ago,
great to
people were
have
laughing
the,
at you. Now,
the scale
not
of
so much.
Amazon. We have
I mean,
Okay.
financial resources. We have lots of
well, I mean, isn't
I
it?
don't know. I don't know.
Maybe but isn't it true that pretty much every auto manufacturer has announced
But the
serious
downside
electrification
of that
plans
is
for
that you can lose your
the short to
nimbleness.
medium term
You can lose
future?
your entrepreneurial spirit. You
Yeah,
can lose
yeah.
your that kind of heart.
I think almost every automaker
that small
has
companies often
some
have.
electric vehicle program.
And so if you could
They
have
vary
the
in
best of
seriousness.
both
Some
worlds,
are
if you
very
can
serious about
have
transitioning
that
entirely to electric,
entrepreneurial
and
spirit
some are
and
just
heart,
dabbling in it.
while at the same time having all the
And some amazingly are
advantages that
still
come with
pursuing
scale and
fuel cells,
scope.
but I think that won't last much longer.
Think of the
But
things that
isn't
you
there
can do.
isn't there a
And-
sense, though,
and so
Elon, where you
how- the
could
question
now
is,
just
how do you achieve
declare
that?
victory and say, you know, we did it.
Scale is good because
Let
it
the
makes
world
you
electrify,
robust.
and you go on and focus on other
A
stuff.
big boxer can take a punch to the head.
Yeah.
The question is, you also want to dodge those punches.
Well, I
so you'd
intend
like
to
to
stay
be
with
nimble.
Tesla as
You want to be
far
big
into the
and
future as I can
nimble.
imagine.
And I find that there are a lot of things that are protective
there are a lot of
the
exciting
day one
things that we
mentality.
have
I already
coming.
spent some time on one of
But
them, which is
obviously Model 3 is
customer
coming soon.
obsession.
will
think
be
that's the
unveiling
most important thing. If you
the
can,
Tesla
and it gets
semi-truck.
harder as you get bigger. When you're at
and
little
maybe-
tiny
We're
companies,
going
say you're
to come on to
10
this.
person
So Model 3. So
every single
it's coming.
person
It's supposed to be
company is
coming
focused on the
in
customer.
July.
When you get to be a bigger company,
it's
you've got all the
looking
middle,
quite
you've got
good
middle
for starting
managers, and you've got all
production in
these
July,
layers.
yeah.
Wow.
And those
One of the things that people
aren't
are so
on the
excited
front
about
lines.
is
they're
the
not
fact that
interacting with
it's,
customers every day.
it's got
They're
autopilot.
insulated from
And
customers.
you put
And
out
they
this
start
video
to
a while
manage
back
not
showing
the
what that
customer, happiness directly, but they
technology
start to manage
looked
through
like or would look
processes
like.
Yeah.
metrics
There's
and
obviously
processes,
autopilot
and
in
some of
Model
those
S
things can
right
become
now.
bureaucratic.
What are we
So
seeing here?
It's very
Yeah,
challenging.
so this is
But
using
one of the things
only
that happens
cameras
is the
and the
decision-making
GPS.
velocity
There's no
slows
LiDAR
down.
or radar being used
And I
here.
think the reason,
This is
one
just
of the reasons
using
that
passive
that
optical,
happens
which is
that
essentially what a
people-
person uses.
So junior
The whole road
executives
system is
inside
meant
the
to be
big
navigated
companies
with
start to model
passive
all
optical
decisions
or
as if they are
cameras.
heavyweight,
And so
irreversible,
once you
highly
solve
consequential
cameras,
decisions. And so
vision,
even two-way doors,
then
you could
autonomy is
you make a
solved. If you
decision,
don't
it's the
solve
wrong
vision,
decision, you can
it's
just
not
back
solved.
up, back through the door
So
and try
that's
again.
why our focus
Even
is
those
so heavily on
reversible decisions start
having
to be made with
a
heavyweight
vision neural
processes.
net that's
And so
very effective
you can
for
teach people
road conditions.
that
Right,
these
many other people are going the
pitfalls
LiDAR
and-
route.
and
You want
traps,
cameras plus
and
radar
then
is
teach them to
most of
avoid
it.
those traps.
You
And
can
that's what we're trying to do at
absolutely be
Amazon
superhuman
so
with
that
just
we can
cameras.
maintain our
Like you could probably do
inventiveness
10 times
and
better than
our
humans with
heart
just
and our
cameras.
kind of
So the
small
new cars
company
being sold right now
spirit,
have
even
like
as we
eight
have the scale
cameras
and scope of a
in
larger
them.
company.
Yeah.
That
So
they can't
600,000
yet
people, small
do
company, which
what
that's
that
a
shows.
that's a trick. So I know
when will they
Bush
be
Center
able
we
to?
focus on leadership, and I know that
I
you're
think
also a voracious
the-
reader.
we're
And
still
you're
on
fond of a
track
book
for being
by
able to
Nassim
go
Taleb called The Black
cross
Swan.
country from LA
And
to New
it's-
York by the end of the
it's
year,
about
fully
human
autonomous.
tendencies to reduce things to anecdote,
and-
reduce things to anecdotal
So
stories.
a car, by the end of the year, you're
and
saying
to shield us from sort of the
someone's going to
randomness
sit in a
of the way things
Tesla,
actually happen.
Building
without touching the
narratives.
steering wheel,
And how-
tap in
how
We can, we
New York,
can create a narrative
off it
around
goes.
anything. To
Won't have
connect
to
any
ever touch
sequence
the
of
wheel.
facts, we can create
By
a
the end of
narrative.
So how do you
2017.
infect that
Yeah.
throughout the whole
Essentially,
organization when you have that many
November
layers?
or December of this
Well,
year, we should be able to go from all the way from a parking lot
I
in
think that, you know,
California
what I
to a
would
parking lot
say
in New
about
York.
that, it's really a
No
little
controls
different
touched
from the
at
way
any point
that,
during the entire journey.
that Black Swan talks about anecdotes. What you're talking about. I'm not a
Amazing.
big fan of anecdotes.
Part of that is possible
in business,
because you've
not
already got a
building
fleet of
narrative structure
Teslas
around
driving all these
necessarily,
roads. You're accumulating a
still
huge amount of
have,
data of that
an email
national
address
road
that
system.
customers can write to. I see
Yes,
most of those
but
emails.
the thing that
and
will
I
be
don't
interesting is that
answer very many of them anymore,
I'm
but
actually
but
fairly
I see
confident
them,
it will be able
and
to
I-
do that
and I
route.
forward them. Some of them,
even
ones
if you
that catch my curiosity,
change the route
I
dynamically.
forward them to
So,
the executives in
Like
charge
it's,
of that area.
it's fairly easy. Or
with a
if you
question
say I'm
mark.
going to be really
And
good at
that
one
question mark is
specific
just a
route,
shorthand
that's one
for,
thing. But
can you look into this? Why
it should
is
be able
this
to go
happening? What's going
really
on?
be very good.
And
Certainly, once you
what
enter
I
a
find
highway,
is very
to go
interesting is we have
anywhere
tons of
on the highway
metrics.
system
We have
in a given
weekly
country.
business reviews with these
So it's not, it's not sort of limited to LA, New York. We could change it, make it Seattle, Florida.
Their, whether we're
that day,
delivering
or,
on time.
in real time. So you were going
what,
from LA to New York, now go from
packages
LA
have too much
to
air in
Toronto.
them and, wasteful
So
packaging.
leaving
We have
aside
so many
regulation for a
metrics
second,
that we
in terms
monitor.
of the technology alone,
And the thing I have
the time
noticed
when
is that
someone
when the
will be
anecdotes
able to buy
and the
one of your
data
cars and literally
disagree,
just
the
take the
anecdotes
hands
are
off the
usually
wheel
right.
and go to sleep and
There's
wake up
something
and find that
wrong
they've
with the
arrived.
way
How
you're
far away is
measuring
that?
it. And that's
do that
why
safely?
it's so important to.
That's about 2
to
years.
keep your-
So
you
the
need
real
to-
trick of
to
it is
run
not,
something that
how do you make it work, say
shipping billions of packages a year, for
99.9%
sure,
of the
you
time?
need good
Because
data and metrics.
if a
Are
car
you delivering on
crashes,
time? Are
say,
you delivering
one
on
in a
time every
thousand
city?
times,
Are you
then
delivering on time to
you're probably
apartment
still not going to be
complexes? Are you
comfortable
delivering
falling
on
asleep.
time in certain countries? You do need the data. But then
that's-
you need to check that
you
data
shouldn't be,
with
certainly.
your intuition and your instincts. And
So
you need to
you-
teach that to
but it's by the
all
same
the
time, it's
senior
not going to be.
executives,
It's never going to be perfect. No system is
and
going to be
junior
perfect.
executives, too.
So
But if you
if
say
you're
it's
not answering your
perhaps,
emails, can you give us your cell phone, maybe a
it's-
text?
the car is unlikely to crash in 100 lifetimes or 1,000
Still have the two
lifetimes.
pizza rule and no PowerPoints?
Then people are like, okay,
Oh yeah,
wow.
the two
I mean,
pizza
if
team.
I would live
we
1,000
try
lives,
we
I
try
would
to
still most likely never experience a crash. Then that's
create
probably okay.
Teams that are no larger.
Maybe, I guess the
than
big
can be
concern of
fed
us
with
is that
two
people may
pizzas.
actually get
We call that the
seduced
two pizza
too
team
early
rule.
to think that this is safe,
No
and that you'll have
PowerPoints
some horrible
are used
incident
inside
happen
of
that
Amazon.
puts things
So
puts things
every
back.
meeting,
Well, I think think that the autonomy system is likely to at least mitigate the crash, except in rare circumstances.
Meeting culture.
The thing to appreciate about vehicle safety is this is
executives have a little
probabilistic.
bit of
So there is
culture shock.
And there's some chance that anytime the human driver gets in the car, that they will have an accident. That is their fault.
Meeting has prepared a
it's never zero.
Memo, a narratively structured memo.
So really, it's the key threshold for autonomy is how much better does autonomy need to be than a person before you can rely on it.
But once you get that literally safe hands-off driving, the power to disrupt the whole industry seems massive, because at that point you've spoken of people being able to buy a car, drops you off at work, and then you let it go and provide a sort of Uber-like service to other people, earn you money, maybe even cover the cost of your lease of that car.
Exactly.
So you can kind of get a car for free. Is that really likely?
Yeah, absolutely. This is what will happen. So there will be a shared autonomy fleet where you buy your car and you can choose to use that car exclusively.
So nobody eats
you can choose to have it used only by friends and family, only by
one author said that takes you back to River Oaks
other
Elementary
drivers
School
who are rated
in Houston,
5-star. You can choose to share it sometimes, but not other times.
I've never made that connection, but
that's
you never know where things come from. I
It's
did
just
have a
question
great
blank.
experience there. So, but I definitely recommend the memo
you
over the PowerPoint.
mentioned the semi, and I think you're planning to announce it in September. But I'm curious whether there's anything you could show us today.
I will show you a teaser shot of the
Executives will bluff their way
shot.
through the meeting as if they've read the memo. Because we're busy.
Okay.
And so
No, that's definitely a case where we want to be cautious about the autonomy
for the memo
features.
to get read, and that's what the first half hour of the meeting is for. And then everybody's actually read the memo. They're not
We
just
can't see that much of
pretending
it.
to have
It doesn't
read
look like just a little
pretty effective.
friendly neighborhood truck. It looks kind of badass.
How has your
what
leadership
sort of-
style
What
changed
sort of semi is this?
over the years?
So this is a
It's
heavy-duty,
changed a lot, mostly just 'cause
long-range
it's had to.
semi-truck.
The
So it's like
company has
the
changed so much.
highest
And,
weight
I
capability
can't, companies of 10
and
people or
with
100
long range.
people, I can be involved in
So
every decision,
essentially,
not
it's meant
just,
to
not just the
alleviate
objectives,
the
like what are we gonna
heavy-duty
do, but
trucking
even the
loads.
methods. How are we going
And
to
this
do
is
it?
something which
And as the
people
company
do
gets
not
bigger,
today think is possible.
the
To
CEO
think
or
the truck doesn't have
founder,
enough
whoever
power
it is,
or it doesn't have
leading
enough
company
range.
cannot,
And then with
be involved
with
in
the
all
Tesla
those
Semi,
decisions. They certainly
we want to show
cannot,
that an electric
be involved
truck
in the
actually
methods
can
of how things are
out-torque
going to get done. So you do have to
any
change
diesel
your leadership approach
semi.
as the company
And
scales.
if you had a tug-of-war competition,
the principles of the company
like
have
the
not
Tesla
changed.
Semi
In fact, I'd
will
probably
tug
spend
the
more
diesel
of my
semi
time now
uphill.
on culture and trying to set high standards
That's pretty cool.
for
And short term,
things-
these aren't driverless. These are going to be
big customer
trucks that
obsession
truck drivers
and,
want to drive.
Yes.
inventions
No, so
and things like
what'll
that.
be really
So
fun about this
for
is
me,
you don't have
I'm
you have
kind of
a
a
flat
teacher now, so
RPM
it's
curve
changed
with an
quite a
electric
bit,
motor,
and I have this
whereas
great
with a
luxury.
diesel motor
I love
or any
my
kind of
job.
internal combustion
I
engine
tap
car, you've
dance
got
into work. I just
torque
got
RPM
back
curve that
from
looks
an
like a
amazing
hill.
vacation in Norway.
So this would be a very
I got to
spry
do
truck.
Dog sledding and
you can drive
go
this
to
around like a
wolf
sports car.
preserve and all this
There's no
really cool
gears.
stuff.
It's like single speed. So
But I couldn't wait to get
There's a
back
great
to work,
movie to
'cause
be
it's
made
so
here
fun.
somewhere. I don't know what
And
it
the
is, and I
reason-
don't
one
know
of the
that it
reasons
ends
it's fun
well,
for
but
me
it's a
is
great
quite-
movie.
I get to work in the future.
It's quite
So
bizarre
my
just
job,
driving
I have a very
when I was driving the
limited kind
the
of
test
day-to-day
prototype for the first truck, it's really weird because you're driving around and you're
needs,
just
I've
so nimble
constructed my
and you're in this
job
giant
so
truck.
that I
Wait,
don't have to.
you've already driven
Yeah,
a
yeah.
prototype that
I can
I
stay
drove it
2 or
around
3
the
years
parking
in the
lot. I
future.
was like, this is
And
crazy.
Actually,
Wow.
I'm always advising my
not
senior team,
paperless.
people who report to me, that they
Like
should
driving
organize
this giant
themselves
truck
in the
and
same
sort of
way.
making these mad
We're big
maneuvers.
enough now that
That's
they
cool.
need to be
Okay,
able to look
from a
around
really
corners.
badass picture
They
to a
can't
kind of
be- if
less badass
something
picture.
pulls me
This is
into
just
the
a cute
present, it's because
house
something
from
has
Desperate
gone wrong.
Housewives or something. What the?
And
What
we need to,
on earth is going on
kind
here?
of figure it's a
Well, this
firefighting
illustrates the
exercise,
picture of the
and that's
future
not
that I
how you
think
should be running a
is
business
how
of this
things will
scale. So
evolve.
it's changed a lot.
You've got
Okay,
an electric
so,
car in the driveway.
Following up with
If you
that,
look
you were
in
quoted
between
as
the electric
saying,
car
I believe
and
you have
the
to be
house,
willing to be
there are actually 3
misunderstood
power walls
if you're going to
stacked up
innovate.
against the side
So
of the house.
how are you
And then
misunderstood?
that,
If you're gonna
that
do-
house roof
if
is
you're
a
gonna do
solar roof.
anything
So that's an actual solar
new
glass
or
roof.
innovative.
Okay, so those
That's a
look
picture
like
of a real.
Really
That's well,
misunderstood.
admittedly, it's
And if you
a real
can't
fake
tolerate
house.
that, then
That's
for
a real
God's
fake
sake,
house.
don't do anything new or innovative. Every
So these roof
important
tiles,
thing we've
some of
done has been
them have
misunderstood.
in them basically
often by
solar power, the
well-meaning,
ability to
sincere
Yeah,
critics.
so the solar glass
Sometimes,
tiles
of
where
course, by
you can
self-interested,
adjust the texture and the
insincere
color
critics.
at a
But-
very fine-grained level.
but, I'll give you
and
an
then,
example.
there's sort of micro louvers in the glass,
this thing called
such
customer
that
reviews.
when you're looking at the roof from street level, close to street level, all the tiles look the same whether there is a solar panel behind it or a solar cell behind it or not.
You guys are very familiar with
So
this.
you have an even color from the ground level. If you were to look at it from a helicopter, you would actually be able to look through and see that some of the glass tiles have a solar cell behind them and some do not.
Right. You put them in the ones that
level.
are likely to see a lot of sun.
Yes.
And that makes these roofs super affordable, right? They're not that much more expensive than just tiling the roof.
Why don't you just publish the positive customer reviews?
We're very confident that the cost of the roof
I thought about this,
plus the cost of electricity.
The argument he's making to me is that our sales would go up.
A solar glass roof will be less than the cost of a normal roof plus the cost of electricity.
I thought about this.
So
this
will be economically a no-brainer. We think it'll look great, and it will last. We thought about like having the warranty be infinity, but then people thought, well, that might sound like we were just talking rubbish. But actually,
part of what they're paying us for.
This is toughened glass. Like well after the house has collapsed, and there's nothing there. The roof the glass tiles will still be there.
Helpful for people.
So I think you're rolling.
And by the way, it's come full circle.
So you're rolling this out in a couple weeks' time, I think, with four different roofing types.
Yeah, we're starting off with two initially, and the second two will be introduced early next year.
But what's the scale of ambition here? How many houses do you believe could end up having this type of roofing?
I think eventually,
that would be the crazy
almost all houses will have a solar roof.
So the new
the thing is to consider the timescale here to be
the new normal,
probably on the order of
it's
40 or 50 years.
It's the new incumbent idea.
So on average, a roof is replaced every 20 to 25 years.
More generally, what I preach at Amazon to all of our employees,
but you don't start replacing all roofs immediately. But eventually, if you say we were to fast forward to
first,
say 15 years from now, it will be unusual to have a roof that does not have solar.
Is there a mental model thing that people don't get here that there's been because of the shift in the sort of cost economics of solar power that like most houses actually have enough sunlight on their roof pretty much to power all of their needs. If you could capture the power,
no matter how
it could pretty much power all their needs, right? You could go off grid.
Yeah, it depends on where you are and what the house size is relative to the roof area. But yeah, it's a fair statement to say that most houses in the U.S. have enough roof area to power all the needs of the house.
If you could write
okay, so the key to the economics of the cars, the semi, these houses is the falling price of lithium-ion batteries, which you've made a huge bet on.
But I would love it.
As Tesla,
Let's
in many
work
ways,
on
that's
that.
the core
I keep telling my biotech friends, hurry.
You've decided that to really
come on.
own that competency. You just have to build the world's largest manufacturing plant, double the world's supply of lithium-ion batteries.
Long term, and I can talk
with,
about
with, with this guy. What is this?
Yeah, so that's the Gigafactory.
If you take
progress
a really
so far in the
long-run
Gigafactory,
view, many decades, maybe
eventually
even a couple hundred
you
years,
sort of roughly see
I
that
think the most important
there's
work
sort of a
that I'm
diamond
doing,
shape
I get increasing
overall.
conviction
When
on
it's
this with every passing
fully
year,
done,
is the
it'll
work I'm doing at Blue Origin
look like a
on
giant
space
diamond,
travel.
or that's the idea behind it.
Why don't we talk about
it's
that?
aligned on true north. It's a small
I think from
detail,
a vision standpoint,
and capable of producing like 100, eventually like 100 gigawatt hours of batteries a year.
100 gigawatt hours. We think probably more.
And then your long-term objective.
And they're actually being produced right now already here, right?
Yeah, we're in production already.
You guys put out this video.
Yeah.
I mean, does that speed it up?
That's the slowed down version.
All of us are gifted with certain passions.
How fast
the people
does
who
it
are
actually
lucky
go?
are the ones who get to follow those things.
When it's running at full speed,
And, I always
you can't
advise
actually
our,
see the
young
cells
employees
without a
and new
strobe light.
interns and so on. You can have
It's just
and
blur.
my kids too. You can have a job,
And help. I mean,
or you can have a career.
one of
or you
your
can have a calling.
core ideas, Elon,
And if you can
about what
somehow
makes
figure
an
out how to
exciting
have a
future is a
calling,
future where we no longer
you'll
feel
hit the
guilty about
jackpot.
energy.
Because that's the big deal.
Help us picture this.
Most
I mean,
people
how
don't ever
many
get there.
gigafactories, if you like, does
very
it take
lucky if you
to
have
get
a
us
career.
there?
A lot of people
It's about 100,
live with a job.
roughly. It's not 10, it's not
So,
1,000, most likely 100.
For me,
See, I kind of find this amazing. Like, you could actually picture, if that's right, you could picture what it would take to move the world off this vast fossil fuel thing. It's like you're building one.
So it's not like I really have a
$5 billion, maybe the next one, or whatever, $5 to $10 billion. Like it's kind of cool that you can picture that project. And you're planning to do a Tesla, or at least another two, announce another two this year.
I think we'll announce locations for somewhere between 2 and 4 gigafactories later this year. Probably 4.
There are many reasons that are given. One of the reasons that is out there, and it's a very old idea.
I can't tease, no more teasing from you for here.
Very well was
where, continent.
Civilizations become spacefaring
you can say
or
no.
extinct. And not even
we need to address a global market.
Kind of
okay. This is cool. I think we should
has kind of come to me that we need we've got all our eggs in one basket.
Double market.
So we need a plan B.
I have to ask you one question. I'm going to ask you one question about politics. Only one. I'm kind of sick of politics, but I do need to ask you this.
You're destroyed, humanity will still be fine.
On a body now giving advice to a guy who has said he doesn't really believe in climate change, and there's a lot of people out there who kind of think you shouldn't be doing that. They'd like you to walk away from that. What would you say to them?
To every planet
well, I think that
in this solar system.
First of all,
Believe me,
I'm just
this
on
is the
2
best one.
advisory councils where the format consists of going around the room and asking people's opinion on things.
My friends who want to move to Mars,
so there's like a meeting every month or 2.
Why don't you first for a year
that's the sum
move to
total
the top of Mount Everest?
My contribution.
Because the top of Mount Everest
to the degree that
is a
there
garden
are people in the room
paradise
who are arguing in favor of doing something about climate change.
And so it's
or, other social issues.
This planet is unbelievable, and as you travel around,
I've used the meetings I've had thus far to argue in favor of immigration and in favor of climate change. And if
all of this,
if I hadn't done that,
amazing things,
that wasn't on the agenda before.
So we need to protect it.
Maybe nothing will happen, but at least the words were said.
I'm not even talking about protecting it from asteroids or nuclear holocaust or anything, although all those things are probably important and valid. But we don't need to worry about that. Because we have something more certain that is
you spoke about this, what seemed like a kind of incredibly ambitious dream to develop rockets that are actually reusable.
Global energy usage.
And you've only gone and done it.
And compound
talk us through this. What are we looking at here?
That in just
a few this is one of our rocket boosters coming back from very high and fast to space. So just delivered the upper stage.
So,
at
and by the way, we have been growing energy usage at a few percent or so for a long time.
Delivery of the upper stage.
And our civilization has a lot of advantages because we
that was a sped up.
Human body, in a state of nature, if you are just an animal in the state of nature,
but I mean that's amazing. And several of these failed before you finally figured out how to get to do it. But now you've done this what, 5 or 6 times.
Person living in a developed country,
8 or 9 or something.
You actually use.
For the first time, you've actually reflown one of the rockets that landed.
We landed the rocket booster and then prepped it for flight again and flew it again. So it's the first reflight of an orbital booster where that reflight is relevant. So you want to appreciate that reusability is only relevant if it is rapid, rapid and complete.
But they will be very soon.
So like an aircraft or a car, the reusability is rapid and complete. You do not send your aircraft into Boeing in between flights.
Right. So this is allowing you to dream of this really ambitious idea of sending like many people to Mars in 10 or 20 years time, I guess. In the next 20 years. And you've designed this outrageous rocket to do it. Help us understand the scale of this thing.
Well, visually, you can see that's
is so small.
Person.
It captures a tiny fraction of the solar output.
Yeah, that's the vehicle.
So once you got into space,
so if that was a skyscraper, that's like a 40, did I read that? 40 stories?
Yeah, maybe a little more.
The solar system can easily support a trillion humans. If you've got a trillion humans, then you have 1,000 Mozarts.
The thrust level of this is really
and so on and so on. That would be a
this configuration is about 4 times the thrust of the Saturn V moon rocket.
Grandchildren's to live in.
4 times the thrust of the biggest rocket humanity ever created before.
Yeah.
Residential and light industrial.
That's one does.
And we'll have universities here and
in units of
beautiful parks
747,
and houses and
747 is only about a quarter million pounds of thrust.
Here.
So
that will be much
so
better
there
done in
are
space,
for every 10 million pounds of thrust, there's 47. So this would be the thrust equivalent of 120 747s with all engines blazing.
And so even with a machine designed to escape Earth's gravity, I think you told me last this thing could actually take a fully loaded 747, people, cargo, everything, into orbit.
Exactly. This can take a fully loaded 747 with maximum fuel, maximum passengers, maximum cargo on the 747. This can take it as cargo.
Was able to do 20 years ago.
So based on this, you presented recently this interplanetary transport system, which
that heavy lifting
is visualized this way. And this is a scene you picture what?
We didn't have to build
30 years time, 20 years time?
That had already been done too.
People walking into this rocket.
And so on. So all
sort
the
of in
pieces of heavy lifting
8 to 10 year time frame.
20 years ago.
Aspirationally, that's
why,
our target.
With $1 million,
our internal targets are more aggressive, but I think.
And then there are even better examples on the internet over the last 20 years. Facebook started.
So this vehicle seems quite large. It is large by comparison with other rockets. I think
space company in their dorm room.
The future spacecraft will make this look like a rowboat. I mean, this is
so that
the future spaceships will be truly enormous.
Will be able to create a giant
why,
space
Elon? Because why do we need to build a city on Mars with 1 million people on it in your lifetime?
That I just laid out of a
kind of what you said you'd love to do.
Space and having this dynamic
world. I think it's important to have
a big industry made up of thousands of companies.
A future that is inspiring and appealing. I mean, I just think that there have to be reasons that you get up in the morning and you want to live. Like, why do you want to live? What's the point? What inspires you? What do you love about the future? And if we're not out there, if the future does not include being out there among the stars and being a multi-planet species, I find that it's incredibly depressing if that's not the future that we're going to have.
Yeah. Pros and cons. We've heard people talk about the great benefits.
People want to position this as an either-or. That there are so many desperate things happening on the planet now, from climate to poverty to you pick your issue. And this feels like a distraction. You shouldn't be thinking about this. You should be solving what's here and now. And to be fair, you've done a fair old bit to actually do that with your work on sustainable energy. But why not just do that?
They're different. I think autonomous weapons are extremely scary. I think it's a big, and you, by the way, do not need.
Look at the future from a standpoint of
so right now, the things that we know how to do,
it's like a branching stream of probabilities.
AI.
And there are actions
machine vision
that we can take that affect
incredibly scary autonomous weapons,
or that accelerate one thing or slow down another thing.
Techniques that we already know and understand
introduce
are perfectly adequate.
Something new to the probability stream.
Some of the ideas that people have for these weapons are in fact very scary.
Sustainable energy will happen no matter what. If there was no Tesla, Tesla never existed. It would have to happen out of necessity. It's tautological. If you don't have sustainable energy, it means you have unsustainable energy. Eventually, you'll run out, and the laws of economics will drive civilization towards sustainable energy, inevitably.
That one I think is genuinely scary.
The fundamental value of a company like Tesla is the degree to which it accelerates the advent of sustainable energy faster than it would otherwise occur.
I think is not something to worry about.
So when I think like what is the fundamental good of a company like Tesla, I would say hopefully it does. If it
first of all, we don't know
if it accelerated that by a decade, potentially more than a decade, that would be quite a good thing to occur. That's what I consider to be the fundamental aspirational good of Tesla. Then
back on that one.
There's
so that's
becoming a multi-planet species and spacefaring civilization.
But second of all,
this is not inevitable.
That such a
it's very important to appreciate this is not inevitable. The sustainable energy future, I think, is largely inevitable.
That would seem surprising to me.
Being spacefaring civilization
much more likely
definitely
it will
not
help
inevitable.
Us.
If you look at
we're perfectly capable of hurting ourselves.
In 1969, we were able to send somebody to the moon. 1969.
So I'm optimistic about that one, and certainly
then we
don't
had
think we need to worry about
the space shuttle,
And then
the space shuttle could only take people to low Earth orbits.
Is AI going to put everybody
Then the
out
space
of
shuttle
work?
retired, and the United States could take no one to orbits.
I find
so that's the trend. The trend is like down to nothing. This is not. If I'm mistaken when they think that technology just automatically improves, it does not automatically improve. It only improves if a lot of people work very hard to make it better. And actually, it will,
we're at some
by itself
big farming
degrade,
convention or something.
actually. You look at great civilizations like ancient Egypt, and they were able to make the pyramids, and they forgot how to do that. And the Romans, they built these incredible aqueducts. They forgot how to do it.
They would not have believed you.
It almost seems, listening to you and looking at the different things you've done, that you've got this unique double motivation on everything that I find so interesting.
And I went
probably find one on Amazon.
I went and
one
looked
is
that up
this
on the internet.
desire
Sure
to
enough,
work for
you
humanity
can
as long as
easily
you
hire a
can. The other is this desire to do something exciting, and it's often. It feels like you feel like you need the one to drive the other. With Tesla, you want to have sustainable energy, so you make these super sexy, exciting cars to do it. Solar energy, we need to get there, so we need to make these beautiful roofs. We haven't even spoken about your newest thing, which we don't have time to do, but you want to save humanity from bad AI, and so you're going to create this really cool brain-machine interface to give us all infinite memory and telepathy and so forth. And on Mars, it feels like what you're saying is, we need to save humanity and have a backup plan, but also we need to inspire humanity, and this is a way to inspire.
But that the quality of work will go up very significantly, and that a higher fraction
the value of
of
beauty and
people will have
inspiration
callings and
is
careers
very much underrated, no
relative
question.
to today.
But I want to be clear. I'm not trying to be anyone's savior. That is not the.
And then I'd be remiss if I didn't use some of our time.
Trying to
on your
think about the
personal
future and not be
purchase,
sad.
Of the Washington Post.
Yeah.
So you buy the Washington Post a few years ago. Is it going the way you thought it would go?
I think everyone here would agree that it is not.
The Post is profitable today. So I bought
None
the
of this
Post
is
in
going to happen
2013.
inevitably. The fact that
Post was,
in your mind you dream this stuff, you dream stuff that no one else would dare dream, or no one else would be capable of dreaming at the level of complexity that you do. The fact that you do that, Elon Musk, is a really remarkable thing. Thank you for helping us all to dream a bit bigger.
But you'll tell me if it ever starts getting genuinely insane, right?
2008 to 2013.
That was really, really fantastic. That was really fantastic. Thanks, guys.
And that
Thank you.
Tremendous amount of pressure on the business. They had needed to reduce the size of the newsroom, lay off reporters, and it was very difficult. And Don Graham, whose family had owned the paper for a long period of time, he contacted me through an intermediary, actually. We'd known each other probably for almost 20 years, actually. And I was very surprised, but he said that he was interested in selling the paper. And he wanted to, I said, look, I'm not the right buyer, Don, because I don't know anything about the newspaper business. And he said, we don't need any of that. We've got lots of people who understand the newspaper business. We need somebody who understands the internet better. And this was a great act of love of Don's, because the paper had been their family for a long time, and he cared more about the paper than he cared about his ownership of it. And if any of you know him, he's an incredible gentleman, just a wonderful guy. And so over several conversations, he finally convinced me that I could help. And then I had to convince myself of a couple of things. One was, did I really believe it was an important institution? And that for me was a very quick gate to get through. I felt very powerfully that it was an important institution. I do believe that democracy dies in darkness. I think that the paper resides in Washington, D.C., the capital city of the United States of America, the most powerful country in the world, needs a paper like the Washington Post. So it was easy to decide it's an important institution. I would not have bought and tried to help turn around a financially upside down, salty snack food company. I just have better things to do. So that's why for me it was so important that it be, I might buy a really well-run, healthy salt food snack company, but that would just be an investment. And so I and then the second gate I had to go through after that was I really wanted to convince myself that it wasn't hopeless, because if it had been hopeless, also I wouldn't want to get involved. But I didn't think it was, and it has turned out to work very, very well. We did one very simple thing, really, which is we switched from, it's been a lot of work, and I don't mean to make it sound simple. The team has done an amazing amount of work, and we have a great editor in Marty Barron, and a great publisher in Fred Ryan, and a great technical leader in Shailesh. I mean, we've got a killer team at the Post. But the big kind of strategic change at the Post was flipping it from being a fantastic local, regional newspaper to being a fantastic national, global newspaper. And the reason we did that is very simple. The internet took away so many gifts from newspapers. Mostly they're kind of local ad monopolies and so on. Like, the internet just dissolved all of the gifts that newspapers had. But the one gift that it brought to the table for newspapers is almost free global distribution, because you can do it digitally. And so we refocused on that, and we had to switch from making a relatively large amount of money per reader on a relatively small number of readers to a small amount of money per reader on a much larger number of readers, and that's what we've done.
And so in our time remaining, I have a couple real quick ones.
Yeah.
Who do you emulate?
What kind of role model?
Yeah, who do you look at?
Oh, a bunch of people. I have been a Warren Buffett fan. In the business realm, I've been a Warren Buffett fan since my early 20s. I read the things he writes. So he's a very big fan. I think kind of CEOs today out there that I like, again, in the business realm. Jamie Dimon, I think there are a couple of CEOs that I think if I were a big shareholder in JP Morgan Chase, I would just show up every Monday morning with like pastries and coffee for Jamie, and I would be like, so you happy? You good? Because I think he's a terrific executive in a very complicated company. Same thing, Bob Iger at Disney, I think, is a superb executive. So probably bring him pastries. So there are a lot of role models.
Healthy pastries.
Well, yeah, I guess I hadn't thought about that. That's right. Yeah. And then outside of that, I've had lots of role models throughout my life. Some of my teachers at River Oaks Elementary School that you mentioned. I had, I had my parents, who I talked about a little earlier. I didn't talk too much about my grandfather, but he was a gigantic influence in my life. I had the great good fortune, because my mom was so young, my grandparents would take me every summer, starting at age 4, every summer, kind of to give her a break, really, for the whole summer. So I'd be with my grandparents, and on their ranch in Cotulla, Texas, which is halfway between San Antonio and Laredo. We lived in Houston, and so we would make the 5-hour drive out to Cotulla. They'd drop me off, spend a couple of days there, then they'd go back to Houston. I'd spend the summer. And I went every day to the ranch with my grandfather to help. Now, a 4-year-old boy on a ranch in South Texas is not a lot of help. But I didn't know that. I thought I was helping, and then by the time I was 16, I actually was helping. So I have, I can suture up a prolapsed cow. I can fix windmills. My grandfather was so resourceful, and that he made his own veterinary needles. He would take a little piece of wire and pound it flat with like a oxyacetylene torch, and then drill a little hole through it, and then we did all of our own veterinary work. Some of the cattle even survived, and so we had great fun out there. We built barns and welded things, and he bought a D6 Caterpillar bulldozer used. It was like 1955 model year for $5,000. It was completely broken. The gears were stripped. And then we spent, a whole summer repairing that. And the first thing we had to do to repair it was build a crane to take the gears out of the transmission. And so you know, what I learned from watching him was just how resourceful he was. He didn't ever call a repairman. He figured it out. And I do think that that's one of the things that, you know, super lucky for me to grow up in that environment where you got to see resourcefulness in action. So my grandfather, giant role model for me.
Jeff, you're an American icon, and these stories really reflect how grounded you are. And starting a company from the time where you were doing it yourself to where you are today, and to maintain that touch that you have at the same time that you have this vision is really what leadership is all about. The Bush Center, we focus on developing and recognizing leadership, and that's what we're doing this week. Our time is up, and I do want to